I would like to really invite my friend, Dr. Henry Chakava, to make remarks and to give his speech. And just also, in the process of, today we are tunafunguliana roho. Si ni kweli? Hata mimi mwacha nifungue roho yangu. You see, Henry and I go very far, and I don't know whether he remembers, but when I was a student, an undergraduate student, I used to part-time edit Kiswahili books with Nazi. I worked very closely with Nazi Kivuda. That's, I used to get my pocket money as a support, working with Kiswahili books. And in fact, also even manuscript assessment, Henry, for Kiswahili. So I would assess manuscripts, and then they would go and then move. And of course, we've done lots of work since then on African languages, with the government pushing space for African languages at government level. So he has been a mentor for me. I would not be, who I am as a scholar, as a writer, without him having identified me pretty early on in life, and discovering that I had this ability. So Henry, asante sana. And I must also say that the work that has been coming out of EAP for development of African literatures and African languages has been absolutely phenomenal. It's a leading, really publishing firm when it comes to these issues. And even this morning, as I was listening to Beverly, and she was talking about her books coming out, of EAP, I'm like, yeah, good stuff. And of course, Ngugi's own, writings, which continue to inspire us, really phenomenal. And the ECD materials, the lower primary books in our languages, very, very special. So it's a privilege, an opportunity to have Dr. Chakava to speak with us, to make his remarks. We know that it takes a lot. His health is not perfect, as you know, but he's really honored us, really, by coming today. Daktari, karibu sana.
First of all, let me introduce myself. As you have been told, my name is Henry Chakava. I am doing my 50th year in publishing because I joined Heinemann Educational Books East Africa Limited in June 1972 as editor. I worked for them for 2 years before I was promoted to publishing manager in 1974. And in 1976, I took over as managing director. I continued as managing director until the year 2000. And the only thing I can say I achieved during those years is I was able to convert the UK company into a local company with the name East African Educational Publishers. From the year 2000, I've been serving that company as chairman, first as executive chairman up to the year 2008, and after that as chairman. Now, my indulgence in African languages publishing was there from the beginning, because when I joined Heinemann, there was already a program of publishing African writers' titles into Kiswahili translations. I found on my desk in galley form 3 books: Mtawa Mweusi by Ngugi wa Thiong'o, Usilie Mpenzi Wangu, also by Ngugi wa Thiong'o, and Kibudi cha Mauti by Peter Palangi of Tanzania. These are the first books that I published in translation, and I continued publishing more translations in Kiswahili. Some of the translations you may be aware of include books like Mchimba Madini, Mind Boy, The Beautiful Ones Are Not Yet Born, Wema Hawajazaliwa, Mshale wa Mungu, Out of God, Houseboy, Boy, and so on. So that program was, in terms of what we were doing for Kiswahili, it was successful, although sales were always difficult. But what I pride myself most with is what I call playing my role in mainstreaming Kiswahili. Because during that time, Kiswahili was not as it is now. It was listed as a subject in the curriculum, and it was not even being taught. So I sat down with some authors, and we constructed a curriculum for it. And we published a course called Masomo ya Msingi. I think some of you may be familiar with that course. It was Masomo ya Msingi. It was written out of our own imagination. And by good luck, if I may say so, in 1982, Moi decreed that Kiswahili should be taught as a compulsory subject in schools. And that course was able to be very, very successful because it was in 7 books, complete with teachers' guides. And we were able to sell thousands of hundreds of copies as a result of that. And that is how Kiswahili became mainstream. So I take pride in having played that role. Now, coming to African languages, I took interest in mother tongue publishing in the early 80s and commissioned some African writers who were already well known for their work. Grace Ogot, Francis Mbuga, David Mailu, Asenath Odaga, and so on, to write children's books in their mother tongue. Ngugi also was in that list. He wrote 3 books, the Njambanene series, and the other writers I've mentioned also published in their languages. The books were marginally successful, and I would have continued with other languages if they had proved to be commercially viable. But unfortunately, they were not. But when I translated them into English, they became successful. So that is one of the problems which I'll deal with when we come to mother tongue publishing. The other books which I have published in African languages are displayed there on the table, and you can look at them. They include recent publications of course books, textbooks for use in primary schools in 7 African languages: Kikuyu, Doluo, Akamba, Kegusi, Giriama, Maragoli, and Bukusu. We have done those books in 7 languages, and we are talking to KICD with a view to getting them used in schools. We have told KICD that we cannot continue publishing books which don't get used. And if they don't buy them, we might be in problems publishing more, but we are committed to continuing publishing in other languages as a publishing house. Now I want to move to my work in publishing Ngugi. I have published everything that Ngugi has written in the Gikuyu language. I have already referred to the Jambanene children's books. They are in 3 volumes, 1 to 3. There is the novel Kaitani Mudarabaini, translated as Devil on the Cross. There is Matigari Manjirungi, translated as Matigari. There's Murogi wa Kagogo, which is in 3 volumes, Wizard of the Crow. There is Kenda Moyuri, which is the Perfect 9. There is Nyoni, Nyonya, Nyona. And Mutiri, which is in 4 volumes. All those are published by my publishing house, and we are very proud to be associated with Ngugi. In fact, I spoke to him last night, and he said that I should give you his greetings, and he said that you are doing something which is very, very important, and you should be proud of yourselves for what you are doing. Now, let me just talk briefly about the challenges in publishing in local languages. I believe there is a policy in place in this country where local languages are allowed to be used as the medium of instruction, at least for the first 3 years of primary education. Within the catchment areas where those languages are used, or in Kiswahili in cases of town. Now, this policy is not being followed. And you'll find that teachers are using the curriculum subject area for those languages. They are using it to teach other languages or other subjects like mathematics or English. This is unfortunate, and I'm hoping that this situation will be corrected, because I know that KICD and NEC and Kenya National Exams Council are working on it. Other countries like Uganda, Rwanda, Zambia, who have straightforward policies in this matter, are able to produce books in the local languages and use them as course books. It is Kenya here we are lagging behind. So policy implementation is very important. In fact, had Moi not decreed that Kiswahili be used in 1992, we would still be having a problem with Kiswahili now. The other problem which I experience as an editor is the issue of orthography in mother tongues. The orthography is not well developed, to the extent that sometimes you find that the same word is written differently in the same text, and what is written is not the same as what is read. This is a problem which requires attention, where we need to have orthographic committees working to straighten orthographies so that everything is uniform. The other problem, or what I see as a challenge, is the poor sales of locally published or books published in local languages. The sales are poor, and the sales are poor because the policy is not there. If the policy is there, as was the case with the Kiswahili, I think we would have no problem, at least as publishers, we would have no problem issuing more and more books in local languages. I would like just to take this opportunity to emphasize the importance of local languages. Research by UNESCO and international organizations, also international writers, have said that if you learn in your local language, you have the capacity to grasp more concepts in that language and in other languages than if you are taught in a foreign language. So it's so important that we should use our local languages in teaching when we start our educational system. I will quote Ngugi here, who says, if you know your own language and you can use it, and then you learn other languages, whether it's French, English, German, Russian, that is empowerment. But if you don't know your own language and you learn other languages like English, French, Russian, German, that is enslavement. That is enslavement. So that shows you just how important the local languages are. And now I'll come to something which happened about 3 months ago. I don't think many people know about this, but this is a great honor for me and for this country and even for Africa. I'll tell you what the vision of the Global Book Alliance is. The vision is a world in which all children are achieving literacy and have access to quality books in a language that they understand. That language is their local language, and with which they can learn to read to learn, and develop a love for reading. The mission is to transform the lives of children in developing countries by working with partners to identify, promote, and support innovations, best practice, and policies that will change the way books are created, procured, provided, and used. The steering committee of the GBA consists of international and multilateral organizations and NGOs such as USAID, DFID, the Global Partners in Education, World Bank, UNICEF, UNESCO, World Vision, Code, Canadian Code, NORAD, Save the Children, ADARE, All Children Reading, a grand challenge for development. As you can see, these are very powerful organizations behind the GBA. They have compiled what they call a global digital library, which consists of over 6,000 titles in indigenous languages. And this is available for downloading free of charge, even for commercial use. So commercial publishers may find an opportunity to go to the Global Digital Library and download books that they may wish to use. So that is about the Global Book Alliance. Let me conclude by commenting briefly on what I have heard while I've been sitting there, because it emphasizes the importance of this seminar. Translation is a very, very important thing. We may not be aware of it because some of the books we read, sometimes we are not aware of the original language in which they were written. We have been able to access them through translation. So if you are translating something, know that there is the potential to get the whole world to access it in some other language. So I want to emphasize translation. It underlines what we were doing when we were publishing African Writers series titles into Kiswahili. There is the potential of even translating them further into African languages. So I want to underline the importance of translation and the importance of this workshop. I hope that it will bring some good thinking in the minds of all of us so that we may have more such workshops in the future where we shall be exchanging ideas such as I've had today. Thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you very much, Henry. I'm sure that some, our writers might have one or two questions.
Jewels disappear because no publisher is willing to take it up. I think there may have been many more Song of Lawinos dying within our community because no publisher is willing to touch an unknown name, a young person who is struggling, a new writer, and so on. How do you think we could overcome this? It makes people who write a bit timid. If you put out your work and it's not even given consideration just because the name is, who is that? It will not sell. The fear, of course, I understand the predicament of publishers because you also want to make your money. Thank you.
In the case of Okot Pipitek, I know that when that book was submitted to Heinemann, it was at a time when Heinemann was looking at books which had potential as prescribable books for use in schools, and they thought probably it would not fit the bill. That was a mistake, and you may be pleased to hear that I was able to take hold of that book from EAPH when EAPH went bankrupt, and it's now in print with EAEP.
Yeah, that is something I also didn't know. So this is really good. And just follow up, because I really enjoyed Okot Pipitek. I enjoyed Song of Lawino. I enjoyed Song of Ochol. I enjoyed Song of Malaya. I enjoyed Song of Prisoner. Chakava. What about the others? That list. Is it just Song of Lawino, or are you also looking at the others?
Well, the others, we haven't looked at them, but I think they are important in their own right, and they need to be attended to. So that is a failing on our part, and I think we need to look at the others with a view to reviving them.
Yeah. Especially Song of Ochol, because Song of Ochol is a very powerful response.
We do have a joint edition which has both Song of Lawino and Song of Ochol.
What was your experience? Because personally, the things I go through sometimes as an editor is you get somebody who wants to be published. They are not really, sometimes you read their work and it's not up there. And I know you understand the standards. So sometimes you just have to write that report and say, no, this one is not yet up there. Sometimes you don't even have the luxury of time to say too many things, so you reject, and then you make enemies. I was telling Siwa here that there are people who came to me, talked to me nicely, looked at their things, they were not, good enough, and that is the last time they communicated to me. So I have made enemies also. How has your experience been? And number two, here, the fact that we have authors here who may be looking for publishers and they do not have a name per se, because Kenya is also accused, most publishers are also accused of publishing names. What would be your word to them? Thank you very much.
Like I was saying, I used to read every manuscript that came into the house, and out of, say, 100, only about 2% were worth considering seriously. The other ones I would reject politely with a letter. I remember receiving a manuscript from a young man in Tumutumu Secondary School called Simon Gikandi. The title, I remember, was The Priest and the Taxman. It was a very good little novel which I liked, but I couldn't publish because of it was not yet up to standard. And I wrote to him and said, one day you'll be a great writer, but for this one, I think you need to do some more work. Now you know that Simon Gikandi is one of the most distinguished professors in the world. So sometimes if we discourage people too early, we might cause them damage. It's always good to encourage them. It's good to read their work. It's good to respond to it. Although I know it is time consuming, but we just simply have to do it as editors. That is my conviction.
My question is not going to be very far from Nganga's observation. Daktari, you've been an editor for a long time. You've highlighted that you've read so many manuscripts and some are thrown away, and you've taken up those ones that have the expected standards. As young and upcoming writers, what are those expected standards that we need to focus onto so that when we are writing, our manuscripts can measure to the standards of the editors and publishing houses? Number two, we are writing, yes, we don't know, but you guide us, and that is our expectation in this workshop. When you are doing something on challenges in publishing in African or local languages, you give something on orthography of African languages. Is there a time, Doctor, that the orthography of our African languages can be standardized? Is it possible? Thank you.
It's not really up to me to standardize orthographies. I can draw attention to that. There is that problem, which is there, and which I'm sure even all of you are experiencing. So maybe if communities can come together and set up orthography standardizing committees, that might be the solution. But we definitely need to do that, because even in the Bible, you find that there is the same word appears differently when you read it, the Bible, even the Bible. So that is the problem with orthography. And it needs to be pointed out, although I don't have the solution for it now. As for what we look for, that's a long one. That's a long question. I don't know how I can respond to it. But as an editor, when you are reading, you get that feel. You just get that feel that this is something which needs to be taken a stage further. The characterization is there. It's good. The themes are okay. The story is flowing nicely. And you are able to identify with it in a human situation. So that is what I was always looking for when I was reading these these manuscripts. It is that just that extra feeling you have when you are reading that makes you decide that this one is worth pursuing further and this one is not. Of course, you cannot always be right. There are cases where I turned down manuscripts which became successful elsewhere, but it's an objective decision that one has to make.
It's reviewed by other people. Isn't it, Henry? Yeah. It's not like he submits a manuscript and then it's not reviewed. No. You have readers. They will read, they'll suggest, move this characterization, do this, do this, do. And he obeys. So
I must say that Ngugi is one author who he will see something else more and more, and he will recall the manuscript and revise it. He will revise it repeatedly until he is satisfied with it and until the editor is satisfied with it. So we don't accept Ngugi's books automatically. We subject them to the same criticism as we would any other book, and he responds the same way we want him to respond. So that is what we expect of other writers as well.
It's such an honor to sit in the same room with Daktari, who, I don't know if most of us know, is considered as the father of Kenyan publishing. So thank you so much. It's an honor. Mine is not a question, but it's more of a concern, and I would really love to hear your thoughts on it. As, like I said, as someone who's considered like the father of publishing in Kenya. The concern that has been in the room and even widely is that, you know, when we write in our languages, the market, where are the books going to sell, who's going to buy, you know, and when we say market, it's essentially it's money we're talking about. But I don't remember who it was, but there's someone who made a remark in the morning and asked, must everything be money? Must all the stories we write be money? You know, we're talking of, you know, coming out of colonialism. 60 years later, we're still talking of the effects of colonialism on us, you know, mental slavery and all that. If we are going to write our stories, if we're going to mentally, you know, like emancipate ourselves, are we going to just keep on relying on, you know, like, for us to submit stories to the publishers, it has to be subjected to the market lens? That brings me to my concern, which is the birth of self-publishing, which so many young, brave Kenyans, including myself, are taking as an answer to just, you know, saying no to the rigorous process of submitting work to the old traditional existing houses like EAP. I've worked with EAP myself. I've translated grade 1, 2, 3 of literacy into Somali, work that I have not yet seen, but I'm being patient, like Professor Kimani said. I know there's a lot that goes on, especially with KICD and that, so I'm very patient on that. But how long can one be patient? I mean, you submit a story, you wait for even 6 months to get a response from them, when I can just go write my creative work, tell my community stories, publish it out there, push it on social media, sell it. And then somebody comes and asks, okay, so you're a writer, where are you published? Who published you? You know, you're not seen as any serious writer. The work is still good, but you're not seen as enough authority to be quoted and all that. So I'm asking, I look at it like a clash of the old, which is, you know, the established writers, and then this young generation of writers who want to take over. So how do you, perhaps what are your thoughts on that? How can I self-publish and still feel like my work is quality enough, which it is?
I don't recommend self-publishing because I know the dangers involved. Because it's very easy to think that you can write the book, you can edit it, you can even go to a printer and have it printed. But really, the real publishing starts when it comes to selling and distributing a book. And that is where you'll find you have a lot of problems when you have self-published. The publisher's role really is to market and distribute your books, get them into bookshops and get them into all sorts of outlets. So personally, I don't encourage self-publishing. I know that we have a course in Somali which we are going to publish. So I appeal to you to be patient. It will be published. I know that because I've been told that it is in our house.
Isn't that good news, guys? I am so happy. I am so happy because since last year, I have really been thinking of Somalia. I have been really thinking about Somali. And I told Sahara that I was working with Somali writers from Garissa for IFTIM. And I know the stories in Somaliland, or amongst our Somali speakers. The stories are many, and the audience is there. We just need to release them. The difference between the commissioned writing and other the unsolicited manuscripts. And if also if someone gives their manuscript to you, there are also issues of copyright and so on, because how do you ensure? So what is there for the writer, and so on. If you have commissioned work versus unsolicited and so on. So if just a little explanation.
Been publishing in mother tongue, and we've done books in 7 languages already. And the books are just lying in the store. We are not selling them. And we have challenged the KICD, asked them to buy some of them before we can continue with the series. In the same sense as I explained earlier, when I did children's books in mother tongue, and I showed them to KICD and asked them to buy, and they didn't. So we get frustrated actually as publishers when we decide to do something which is in line with government policy, and then when we do it, nothing happens. We have plans to publish in Maasai, and that will be within the series which I've just explained. But we will not proceed with more books in this line until we start to see results from KICD. Because as Kimani mentioned, a lot of money has gone into those 7 books, and we have seen nothing coming out of KICD. So please be patient. As soon as KICD begins to respond to our books, we shall take in more. Now, talking about solicited and unsolicited manuscripts, or where you commission an author to write a book. Commissioning simply means you take the initiative as the publisher. You know what you want, so you go to an author whom you know to be the best person in the subject, and you ask them to write a book in that area. That book has a very good chance of succeeding because it is you, the publisher, who have asked for it. So solicited manuscripts are very much in favor of being accepted for publication. The unsolicited ones are the ones I was talking about earlier, where we can get up to 100 manuscripts, and out of those, only about 2 can be taken seriously. Those are unsolicited. They come in from nowhere. You did not expect them, but they just come. And they come because they know you are a publishing house and you are doing books in a subject they think you may be interested in. So the most important thing I'm saying here is it may be a good idea to talk to a publisher when you are planning to write your book. Talk to a publisher and tell him or her that you are planning to write a book in this language at this level. The book will be so many pages and it will cover this subject. If he encourages you, then you are on a good wicket. You will get the book published eventually. But if you just write on your own and then you confront it, you confront a publisher with it, chances are you may not be as successful as if you had received an invitation to write from the publisher.
Now deeper into the whole question of publishing, I think you have a better understanding of what it means, that you submit your manuscript, it is reviewed. Maybe the publishing house has over 100 manuscripts, maybe only 2 will be published. And if yours is not picked, it does not mean that you cannot be a writer. It just means that there are very many and there are other considerations. And if it is picked, then it goes through a process of editing. And then if it gets to that point, then you are now signing a contract. And you sign a contract, with the publisher. And once you sign a contract, you agree on the percentage royalty that you get. And you get your royalties at the end of the year, calculated, and so forth and so on. Of course, the publisher also gets money because they have invested. They have to pay rent, they have to pay the editors, they have to pay the distribution, they have all those other expenses that they go through. And another cut goes to booksellers who must also get a percentage, for using their space to stock your book and so on. So there are many, many, many players in the process. But I want to assure you that it is still worth it. Do you know that even if you don't, of course it's good to make money. Okay? It's good to make money. You need the money. But you know that even if you don't make a lot of money, the fact that you have your book that represents your ideas available in the world, that is good. That's actually good. It's actually good. It's good to be paid. It's good to make money, but that should not be the only motivation. If you write to be rich, you'll never be rich. Write because it is good for you to write, and you have something you'd like to tell the world about your community and your experiences. So we should be pushing these ideas. So again, Daktari, really thank you so much let's give him a clap again for a fantastic set of interaction. Thank you, Daktari, and we will produce good stories from this team. We will work with them over the next couple of months to ensure that the quality of the stories that they write, both in the original form as well as in the translation form, is of high quality, because we are committed to this journey.